Hey, what's going on out there, everybody? Robert Phoenix broadcasting to you live from Central Texas. Well, another day in the three-ring circus known as the United States of America, as the forces, the wintry forces of, I don't know, what are we talking about here? Thule, the winter forces of Thule descend upon the Northern Hemisphere, at least certain parts of the Northern Hemisphere. To my friends out in the UK, it's supposed to get extremely snowy where you are. Snowy, icy, we're talking temperatures that are radical for you, no matter what time of year. So anyway, whatever is going on the socio-political level is paling to some extent what's happening meteorologically. And of course, our good friends out in California are still being held hostage by that big front that just won't come into the coast for whatever reason, just keeps hanging out there and stalling again and again and again, day after day after day, right there at the limit of the California coastline. Well, it's not quite at the coastline, but further out. How is everybody this morning? It's a very difficult time to be in America right now, to be honest with you. And I'm going to be very, very clear, very upfront, and I'm going to use as much compassion and empathy as possible, because this is not an easy time to kind of be in the game. And it takes a lot to sort through what's happening, and not just sorting through it kind of individually for yourself to get a handle on what's taking place, but also how you deal with it in your own life. And I have a nice group of people over on Facebook that listen, contribute. It's a really kind of a cool community that's sort of evolved over the last 10 years. And some people have been around for a while, and some people have left and gone off and done other things because that's just the way life is sometimes. But by and large, a fair amount of unity. Not always agreeing on everything, but a fair amount of unity. Well, this latest event has really changed a lot of that. I have a dear friend on Facebook and a sometime client, and she kept coming back with, "What about this? What about this? What about this?" And they were fairly kind of common talking points, like as related to the NRA and how disgustful and how disgusting and how bad the NRA is, and of course touting the exploits of David Hogg and look, I spend a lot of time going down these rabbit holes, and I can tell you unequivocally that you could go to just about any number of sources on the internet, in the information that I've provided on Facebook in conjunction with people like Randy and Emily, some of the stuff on my website, and certainly during the broadcast, you're going to find probably most of what's available in a compendium kind of collection of how to slice and dice this thing. And I'm not saying that because I'm trying to toot my own horn. I'm saying it because I've been all over the internet and have scoured to find as much as possible around this event. And of course, it's evolving. The latest piece now is we have this teacher who has gone on the interview circuit and talked about a guy wearing metal armor and a helmet and a rifle that she didn't recognize. And now, does that sound like Nicholas Cruz? Not really. Of course, there'll be no trial with Nicholas Cruz whatsoever He just sat there and he admitted to what he did and didn't say a word. His attorney basically said that he has a great deal of contrition and remorse, and so close that book. I mean, that thing happened in, what are we talking about? 13 days, 2 weeks. Open and shut case, bring him in. Dog and pony show for the courts. Yeah, that's the guy. Close the door. Now we have some flack with Scott Israel, who is the sheriff. And now people are basically calling for Scott Israel to lose his job, except, of course, for David Hogg. David Hogg is right out front saying that Scott Israel doesn't deserve to lose his job, and he goes after Rick Scott, the governor of Florida. So this is going to be a defining moment. I'm telling you, when I tapped into this psychically and I looked at the charts associated with the shooting, which you can find on my website, I knew that this is going to be a turning point and a pivot for the country in many ways. And we have one group on one side, which is basically saying we want to disarm everybody, we want to take guns away. I told you who the players were in terms of the organizers yesterday. If you haven't listened to the show, I highly recommend that you listen to the board of directors of the group that's leading the march on the 24th of March, those first few days of Aries, and really kind of like the last days, getting close to the last days of Chiron in Pisces and moving to Chiron in Aries. So we broke that down yesterday. Anyway, we see this happening on that side. There's this rush, not to just disarm people or disarm the populace or take the guns or whatever it is that they want to do, whatever the left wants to do. But there's also a movement now to muzzle people. And again, I talked about that yesterday as it relates to the shutting down of YouTube accounts. Richie Allen is gone. YouTube has now taken a very proactive and aggressive approach to removing people. Now there's a migration that's taking place over to other video services like BitChute or DTube. This is a good thing, I guess. This is a good thing because at some point there has to be some kind of a migration. But how that gets repopulated and how people get over there and how people find the videos, well, that's going to be part of the process. And I think it's an essential one. Paul Joseph Watson, who was a really early casualty, by the way, on the YouTube side of things. He was getting millions and millions of views on his YouTube videos. And he's over on BitChute now, doing his stuff. Whether or not you're a fan, that's a whole other topic unto itself. So we see what's happening on that side of this Hegelian dialectic. Okay, that's what's happening over there. So what's going on the other side? Well, I spent about an hour yesterday listening to Dr. Jerome Corsi and Lionel. Oh my God, Lionel. He's like the Jack Russell Terrier of the truther, quote unquote, truther movement. And none of what Lionel and Corsi have to say is kind of breathtakingly radical or original. If we wanted to, we could sit there and I could go through all the different talking points that they're going through. However, what's different about what they're now beginning to assemble as sort of the talking points of the right, this is what Corsi was really advocating yesterday, was that we have to harden the target. Harden the target. What does that mean to harden the target? Well, it means that we can't have places like schools or shopping centers or athletic events, anything that's public, we cannot allow them to be soft targets. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means that the people who are there need to be, quote unquote, guarded by people who have firearms. So essentially what Corsi is saying is that, I think it's time for armed guards to patrol our schools. How about that? How about that idea where on every school campus to deter a shooter, you've got at least 2 people. And Corsi said, well, they can be ex-vets. Okay, well, you have to vet the ex-vet. And I'm not even saying that I'm down with this idea. I'm just not. But that's what Corsi and Lionel were offering up as a solution, because this is what Trump is offering up as a solution. That instead of allowing the children to be soft targets, now if you're somebody with a gun, you're going to think twice before entering onto a school campus, because you'll have 2 people, at least 2 people, with very powerful semi-automatic weapons and Kevlar vests sort of patrolling the halls and the schools at all times. Now, how do you feel about that? This is the new solution. Okay, sounds like the final solution to me, if you ask me. And of course, Corsi and Lionel talk about, oh well, it certainly works for Israel. This works fine for Israel. They never have any problems. They're walking around armed, locked and loaded all the time. And so I'm asking myself, what's going on here? What is going on here? We're being offered up these 2 extreme versions of this situation, which is the problem, the reaction, and the solution. The problem must be redefined. So this is where we get into the fine print of the Hegelian dialectic. What's the problem? What's the problem? Is the problem that our children are susceptible to these wingnut lone gunmen who are able to freely buy firearms wherever they want, and they can come on campus because they are deranged, they're loners or outsiders, whatever. And now they can use that weapon and indiscriminately kill innocent people. Is that really the problem? Is that the problem? And I'm asking in a very straightforward, non-confrontational kind of way. And I would beg to differ. I don't believe that's the problem. No, that's not the problem. The problem is the fact that we are in a massive, and I mean a massive, culture, socio-political war. And it's not just a war between 2 different factions, the left and the right. We're in a spiritual war. We are in a spiritual war. We are engaged in spiritual warfare. Of course, the famous quote is, we're not at war with men or nations, but principalities and powers. And this is a really big issue. This is the big piece here. That this is where the war is taking place on the spiritual plane. And of course, there might be people on the left who would agree with that, and to some degree, people on the right who would agree with that. But the war here is a war of deception. It's a war of deception. It's a war of lies. It is a war that's being perpetrated upon your spirit, your consciousness, and as Steve Crimmy talked about, or at least he left a comment on yesterday's show, he talked about what better way to harvest loosh. Boy, this is a loosh fest right now. America is a loosh fest, and I have to be very, very conscious and aware, and to make sure that I don't get too strident around this stuff, because I feel like what we have to have at this point is just a hard line in the sand, and just look, if you're on this side and I'm on this side, and this is the way it's going to go. And unfortunately, we're getting to that point, because as I said yesterday, I had this really cool person and longtime friend and advocate and somebody who really respected my work and I said, look, I said, I support the First Amendment and the Second Amendment, and I do. I don't own a gun, but I support the right for Americans and every person on this planet to own one. Now, that may sound aggressive, that may not sound very enlightened, but that's the truth. And I also respect the fact that we can speak freely without censure or without the potential loss of whatever it is that we're going to risk by speaking what's in our minds and our hearts. Then I went on to say what I don't support and respect is the fact that these children are essentially being activated and used as human shields in a very, very sophisticated operation. And I didn't respect that. And of course, I base this upon the work that I've been doing and looking at and diving into around the main characters in this ongoing saga and drama. And of course, you can go back and listen to the last few shows. The relationship between David Hogg and Kevin Hogg and Cubic Communications and James Sneed, the parent, the foster friend, parent, whatever, of Nicholas Cruz and his relationship to Army intelligence. Then we have the Caskies and their bizarre World Adoption Agency, getting into sort of the high strange of what that represents, and that agency getting shut down. And you look at the network of the players involved, and all of a sudden it becomes pretty clear that there's something much bigger afoot here. And that's just the bottom line. It's the bottom line. And this is where I run into sort of the Gordian knot, which is I can sit here and I can try to tell you and convince you to the best of my ability that what you're seeing is not really what you're getting, that this is, for all intents and purposes, a very sophisticated magic trick. I'm not saying that people did not die. Of course, we all have to say that disclaimer now, don't we? We all do, and I believe that. But we also have to understand what else is going on here and why the narrative is being controlled and why it's being run in a certain direction and to what extent that's taking place. But to me, this idea that we're going to arm our it's one thing to have, let's say for instance, teachers, and this is happening now, by the way, teachers are taking open training courses. I'll give you an example of that. This is a story, and it's on Zero Hedge. I'm just going to read a little bit to you. Ohio sheriff offers free gun training to 50 teachers, forced to cap at 300 after huge response. So an Ohio sheriff who offered free firearms training to 50 teachers was forced to cap his offer at 300 after a flood of local school employees signed up in the wake of a Florida high school shooting that left 17 people dead. We put it online. We thought we'd get 20 school teachers. Within 20 minutes, we had 40. Within an hour, we had 100. Within 4 hours, we had 200. By the next morning, at 300, we cut it off. Butler County Sheriff Richard Jones said on Fox and Friends. If you listen to media teachers, do not want to carry weapons in schools. We have over 300 said want to. School personnel, these are tweets. School personnel start gun training in Butler County, Ohio. Monday, we will train over 120. So now we're in that zone where they're going to be theoretically, or they could be in this part of Ohio, Butler County, they could be like air marshals who are armed and they're on planes. You don't know that they're there. And obviously, you would think that perhaps if they are there, they're armed, so you might second guess doing a shenanigan or something sneaky on a plane. Well, the same thing can be said now for school teachers. Okay, well, that's an option. That's an option. But what Corsi and what Lionel were offering up, and even what I've heard on Alex Jones, is people packing hardcore heat in a very public space, like a school. So do you want your kids being raised in an environment where it's not just guns that are being owned and operated by the public, but guns that are pervasive, everywhere. You know, I remember walking down the streets in Mexico City the first time I went there. This is back in the 1990s, and I was kind of blown away by guys standing on the street corner with big, fat, semi-automatic weapons. So I'd never seen that before in any country. In fact, I think that was one of my early excursions outside of the U.S. Kind of blew me away. It didn't leave me with a great feeling, and you know, how is that going to impact a kid growing up in school from day one, seeing that there's always somebody kind of patrolling at the perimeter with a gun? Because it's not just going to be high school. It'll be kids that are, you know, kindergarten, first, second, third grade. So they're being indoctrinated with watching this sentinel or this sentry on the periphery of their lives. They'll be indoctrinated. I mean, that's, of course, if we go down this path. And this is what one side is offering up as a solution to what's taking place. And these guys were, oh yeah, I mean, I don't know about Jerome Corsi. And he certainly loves him some Q. He loves him some Q. And we're not talking barbecue, although the size of James Corsi, he's probably had said yes to more barbecue than no in this lifetime. And more importantly, the sides. So this is troubling for me. And I get to see this as part of this problem, reaction, solution. And the solutions are either all or nothing. Right? Solutions are we take them all away and then you guys are screwed, or we arm people to patrol the perimeter, at which point you're kind of living in a de facto police state. Now, it's not a soft police state, which the other might be, but a de facto police state where, again, there are sentries and sentinels cruising around. I don't think it's a great option. Let's put it that way. It is not a great option, and yet that's what's being offered up. So now we have teachers that are being armed and trained. I've got some visual stuff later today, that I'm going to put up on Facebook that is connected to David Hogg. And somebody found a picture of him with his mother, and it looks for all intents and purposes that he is wearing a graduation gown from Redondo Union High School. Not Redondo Shores, but Redondo Union High School. Now, it's a very tight, close-crop picture of him wearing what looks like kind of a hot, kind of a magenta-ish, hot pink, almost red-colored graduation outfit with a lot of goodies around his neck, like, I don't know, Chinese candy or something. I don't know what it is. And there's his mother, and he's wearing a tie underneath it. Clearly, it looks like a graduation outfit, graduation robe. And then somebody posted a series of pictures from Redondo Union High School where they're wearing the exact same color robe, and they're also wearing all the kind of festoonery draped around their necks. So if that's really the case, then David Hogg would have graduated clearly sometime before 2018. And the numbers are looking at more like 2015, 2016. So David Hogg might actually be, let's see, about 22 or 23. About 22 or 23. And again, I'm putting it out there, and you can make your own judgments or your own calls on that. Okay, but I think what we really need to focus on is this very active dynamic that's taking place across the country, and it's not great. It's just not great. And we're going to have to sort through this and get through this, however it's going to manifest, and it's not going away anytime soon. Now, David Hogg has decided that, he wants to boycott and get people to boycott FedEx, because FedEx has a relationship with the NRA. So I'm just going to read this to you. This is from Gateway Pundit. FedEx released a statement Monday afternoon announcing it would not be dropping the discount for NRA members. The FedEx announcement was in response to a boycott campaign led by celebrity student activist David Hogg in the wake of the February 14th massacre at Hogg's High School, Marjory Stoneman Douglas, in Parkland, Florida, that killed 17 students and faculty. Earlier Monday, Hogg posted a tweet urging stockholders to sell their FedEx stocks. FedEx is just one of many targets of Hogg's boycott tirade. In addition to companies doing business with the NRA facing his boycott calls, Hogg also called for a spring break boycott of Florida. Here's some of his tweets. Sell FedEx stock if they want to stick with the NRA. We'll stick with UPS or USPS. Another David Hogg tweet. No matter who you are or what organization are, I'd be a huge help. I don't know about his grammar here. I'd be a huge help if you change your shipping service over to USPS or DHLUS or UPS in support of us. In fact, tweet out at companies that use only at FedEx and demand action. Let's get this done. Hogg retweeted a tweet with his anti-NRA graphic posted by an anti-Trump resistance activist. When you ship FedEx, you support the NRA. Your move, Ryan Knights at boycott NRA, hashtag boy. Your move, FedEx. Is this really the side of history you want to stand on? Because you are on the wrong side. FedEx posted their response on the FedEx website and Twitter. The statement says FedEx disagrees with the NRA, but does not discriminate against customers over politics, beliefs, or positions on issues. FedEx Corporation's positions on the issue of gun policy and safety differ from those of the NRA. FedEx opposes assault rifles being in the hands of children, of civilians, while we strongly support the constitutional right of U.S. citizens to own firearms, subject to appropriate background checks. FedEx views assault rifles and large capacity magazines as an inherent potential danger to schools, workplaces, and communities when such weapons are misused. We therefore support restricting them to the military. Most important, FedEx believes urgent action is required at the local, state, and federal level to protect schools and students from incidents such as the horrific tragedy in Florida on February 14th. FedEx is a common carrier under federal law and therefore will not deny service or discriminate against any legal entity regardless of their policy position or political views. The NRA is one of hundreds of our organizations in our Alliances Association marketing program whose members receive discounted rates for FedEx shipping. FedEx has never set or changed rates for any of our millions of customers around the world in response to their politics, beliefs, positions on issues. Now here's another tweet from Young Hogg. Let's make a deal. Do not come to Florida for spring break unless gun legislation is passed. These positions these politicians, he's got to work on his spelling, won't listen to us, so maybe they'll listen to the billion-dollar tourism industry in Florida. Hashtag never again. Oh, boy. So, good luck on that. Good luck on getting thousands and thousands and thousands of kids, hundreds of thousands of kids. Is that the right number descending upon Florida for spring break? Now, spring break is something we're going to have to keep an eye on. Am I right? I mean, unfortunately, now we've got to go. Okay, here we go. We've got another issue. We've got another set of circumstances. We've got another potential event here with spring break. I guarantee you, if anything happens, it won't happen out in the public. It won't happen on the beach. It won't happen in any of those places. If anything, it'll happen where there's a concert being held. The one thing about Las Vegas, it was so brazen and open. That was kind of a real outlier in terms of these events, which I thought, wow, this is interesting. Because most of the time when these things do occur, they're inside or they're in very controlled environments, and there's a history of having a lot of drills taking place beforehand. In fact, we can even go back to San Bernardino, where at that community center, there was a number of drills have been taking place for the entire year prior to what happened and what went down in San Bernardino. Speaking of these drills, I was talking with my girlfriend's daughter yesterday, and she was telling me that the drills that they're going to have at her school, and even the schools that are younger at a lower level, so we're talking elementary school, she's in middle school, is that somebody is going to come to the door of the classroom with a gun. Like, this is part of the drill, and it's going to be unannounced, and somebody's going to show up, and they're going to have a gun, and not just any gun, but a gun that, like, smokes. What the hell are we doing? Why are we doing this? I mean, I understand, like, these are rhetorical questions, okay? But these kids are being traumatized. This is not climbing under your desk for an earthquake in California. No, this is completely different. So now what do we have? We've got a whole generation of kids that are walking around traumatized, thinking, oh my God, this person could be a shooter, this person could have a gun. And of course, what happens when there's a trauma? What happens? They drop the program in after the trauma. They drop the program in after the trauma. This is what occurs. It occurs on an individual level, and it occurs on a collective level. You go back and look at how they actually create their charges in MK Ultra. People like Kathy O'Brien and any number of monarchs, and betas, and whoever they churn out. What do? They traumatize the hell out of them. And then they put in a program, and their brain becomes disassociated, bifurcated, drop the program in, set up a keyword with that program or a series of keywords, usually something from Alice in Wonderland or The Wizard of Oz or Little Red Riding Hood or whatever it is that they are told. And it triggers them, and they go back into that traumatized program state. And this is what happens on an individual level. Well, they do it on a collective level as well. They did it with 9/11. And this is a generation's 9/11. It just is. This is the generation. This is the Pluto and Sag generation version of 9/11. And they're traumatized. They're traumatized, and they're inserting the programs post-trauma. This is what happens. This is how they essentially program people. They did it after JFK. They did it after 9/11. Here we go. They're doing it now. And trust me, this is not the last of these events that we're going to be dealing with. Nope, not even close. Not even close. And again, pursuant to all this is the massive censorship that is now taking place across all the various platforms. It's not an easy time to make fun or make light of the situation, because it's a pretty serious situation. I'm going to be straight up with you. It's a pretty serious situation, and there's going to be a rush to convert as many people, as many young people, to the Democratic Party during the midterms so they can really mobilize and get more. Not that it always really matters. I mean, because we can see that the left, right are just part of this, massive kind of, mind control program, for lack of a better term. So, I guess we should do a little time tunnel today. What do you think? See if we can inject a little levity into our morning conversation here. Let's see, what's today? Today's the 27th. We are just a few days away from the 1st. Here we go, February 27th. Let's punch that up and let's see some of the key dates. Hey, today is Josh Groban's birthday. How about that? Oh, and the infamous JWoww from the Jersey Shores. All right. Let's cue that. Let's cue that time tunnel. It's not just music. This is sound. This is sound that takes. Okay, here we are. It is February 27th, and the year is 425. Where the University of Constantinople is founded by Emperor Theodosius II at the urging of his wife, Aelia Eudocia. How about that? The University of Constantinople in 425. Let's see, who else do we have here? Oh, back in 1594, good old Henry IV is crowned the King of France. The King of France. In 1776, the American Revolutionary War, the Battle of Moores Creek Ridge in North Carolina breaks up a loyalist militia. And in 1782, the House of Commons in Great Britain on this day voted against further war in America. How about that? In 1801, pursuant to the District of Columbia Organic Act of 1801, Washington, D.C. is placed under the jurisdiction of the U.S. Congress. How about that? Let's see. Here we go. This is an interesting event, which I was not aware of. In 1812, poet Lord Byron gives his first address as a member of the House of Lords. Hey, how did Lord Byron become Lord Byron? He was an actual lord. In defense of Luddite violence against industrialism in his home county of Nottinghamshire. So Byron was saying, hey, you Luddites, go out there and smash the future. I'm with you. Let's see. Back in 1860, Lincoln made a speech, kind of a seminal speech here for him at Cooper Union in New York. It's largely responsible for his election to the presidency. Let's see, what else do we have here? In 1870, the current flag of Japan is first adopted as the national flag for Japanese merchant ships. So far, it's a pretty mild day in terms of history. 1930, oh, here we go. This is a big date right here. Big date, 1921, the International Working Union of Socialist Parties, also known as the IWUSP, was founded in Vienna in 1921. A year later, a challenge to the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution, allowing women the right to vote, is rebuffed by the Supreme Court of the United States in Lesser versus Garnett. In 1933, things are heating up here now. The Reichstag fire. Germany's parliament building in Berlin, the Reichstag, is set on fire. Marinus van der Lubbe, a young Dutch communist, claims responsibility. The Nazis used the fire to solidify their power and eliminate the communists as political rivals. How about that? Today, under the Piscean sun, is the anniversary of the Reichstag fire. Let's see, what else do we have here? 1951, we got the 22nd Amendment, basically keeping presidents to 2 terms. It's not that long ago. Not that long ago at all. Let's see, what else do we have? Oh, a wonderful moment in 1991 when G.H.W. Bush announced that Kuwait was liberated. Yeah, great moment in time. Not. Let's see, what else? Anything else interesting? We had a big earthquake in Chile back in 2010. So really, I think the key events here are it's the Reichstag event, 1933. Then of course we have the IWUSP, which was founded just a year before that, and that was the rise of socialism post Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. David Sarnoff was born on this day. He's the guy that founded RCA and is responsible for partially responsible for television, not completely. Roberto Assagioli, the father of a very interesting form of psychology, personology. Isn't that what it's called? Personology? Assagioli? Let me just make sure we got here. This is where he talks about all the different versions of self. Transpersonal psychosynthesis. Psychosynthesis. That is Assagioli's contribution to modern psychology, which basically says we have all these different selves in our head, which is true to some extent. We do. But there are people who would argue that Assagioli's version of psychology would also promote a certain type of madness, where the psyche is not unified but split into all these various personalities. Let's see, who else do we have here today? Any other interesting birthdays? John Steinbeck. It's his birthday. And let's see, anyone else? Ralph Nader. I guess Ralph Nader's still around, isn't he? We can thank Ralph Nader for his contribution to the Bush election when he ran as a third-party candidate, split that vote. Thanks, Ralph. You were great with that. All right, let's bring it back to present time, 9:01 Central Standard Time. And with that, we return to the present. Our trip through time and through the time tunnel on this day. Well, why don't we pull this train into the station today? And look, everything is really, really fluid. And what I try to get across today during today's show is how there's what's emerging out of this event is, again, part of this Hegelian dialectic, which there are two solutions, and neither of which are really, in my estimation, great solutions. It's an all or nothing solution. And on the one hand, you have absolutely no guns, and we turn the guns over to the people who were not doing a very good job at the event, prior to the event, during the event, and now even after the event. What do I mean by that? Well, they knew who Nicholas Cruz was. No intervention. Number two, as the event was going on, there were a lot of people that had guns. What was going on with them? They were completely ineffective. One guy was fired. Scott Peterson. Demolition Man was the movie that I was referring to yesterday. Thank you for the comments in the chat room. And by the way, the police were watching a 20-minute delay on YouTube of what was going on inside the school. Can you believe that? A 20-minute delay. So what they were seeing wasn't even real time. And they were watching it on freaking YouTube. They didn't have their own CC. You would think that was somebody like Kevin Hogg, so close to the school, with his Cubic Communications, very sophisticated systems, able to watch that real time on a secure channel. But no, they had to watch it on YouTube. And as a result of that, they were ineffective too. Even with all the guns, they were completely ineffective as well. So we have all these different branches that were involved in the event prior to and during, and they had plenty of firepower at any point in time. And what did they do? They did nothing. They did virtually nothing. And we want to give the guns to this group, or even if you're on the left, right? And you look at Trump, and you look at the Trump administration, and you say to yourself, well, this guy's a tyrant. He's a dictator. Do you want the tyrant and the dictator to have the guns? You got to ask yourself that question. It's a really important question to ask. So that's one version. The other version, of course, just to recap, is guns everywhere, which really becomes the Gazafication of the U.S. And it's a whole nother model that's rolled out. And I'm not happy really with either. I'm not sure anybody else is really happy with either version of this event that that has happened now. I guess we're almost 2 weeks into it, right? Tomorrow will be exactly 2 weeks. It'll be the 28th. So, all right. Relax. Just relax. Take a breath. And again, do something for yourself that's going to make you just a little bit better today. Whatever that thing is. Whatever that thing is. Do that thing. You know, I had a chair massage last week at Whole Foods. Holy smokes, man. This woman was incredible. It might have been the best chair massage I ever got in my life. $18. Extremely well spent. These are the little things. And look, in terms of the big picture stuff, try to stay clear of crossfire. Try to stay clear of the crossfire. I think it's the best thing that you can do to maintain your mental health, your spiritual health, and your kind of emotional boundaries. So keep it cool. Like if you're onto it and you understand what's happening, then we're going to have to develop a different model of evolving our consciousness as it relates to this. It's all the way it is. You know, there was a point in time when I had this idea about what it would be like to communicate the quote-unquote truth, and the whole the image that popped into my head was threading the eye of a needle, and that eye of the needle is going to be the portal for truth in the days to come and in the future, unless something absolutely crazy takes place and all of a sudden we have the QAnon trials and people are really disappearing, and we see this apparatchik on the left side of things being the breakdown and some orders restored, whatever. Okay, I'm just that Disneyland ride, it's out there somewhere, right? But if that doesn't happen, then what we're dealing with and what we're talking about is threading the eye of that needle. And that eye is a portal for truth. And what gets through that eye is almost like a laser beam of light. And everything else it doesn't make it. It doesn't make it through that very, very narrow channel. So until we get to that point, refine your own consciousness and do something good for yourself today. I will. This is Robert Phoenix. You've been listening to 15 Minutes of Flame. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to say what's possible. I will be